This is Todd Danielson here at the Esri User Conference 2025 in San Diego. And right now I'm with Adan, Banda, and Mann. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves and tell us why you're here this year?
Yeah, so my name is Adan Banda, and I'm the Senior Geospatial Data Manager for DFW Airport. We're here at the conference mainly because we have a lot of vendors and integrations that we want to make and integrate with, and so we're trying to establish those connections better, improve internal connections with Esri, and just have set up a better network for ourselves for future use, for future integration just with the airport and GIS products.
Mann, Geospatial Analyst with DFW International Airport. I'm here mostly focused on asset management and ArcGIS indoors. That's what I'm hoping to glean from being at the conference this year.
You guys are also doing a presentation later today, I believe, about the airport.
That's right.
Can you talk a little bit about the specifics and then the main focus of your presentation?
Our presentation is mainly focusing on our AWARE initiative, which is a predictive model that allows us to better prepare and mitigate traffic incidents. So that way our internal teams, our operations, airside ops teams can better respond to these incidents, whether they be, an accident, maybe just a lot of congestion from planes taking off, arriving, and we want to be more proactive than reactive. And I think that's where this model comes into play. And so, I'll turn it over to Brandon to go over digital twin.
Yeah, I'll be covering the digital twin and our key stakeholders, our utilities department. I'll cover details considering the asset management. I'll be double dipping. I'll be not only am I researching asset management here at the UC, I'll also be presenting on it and just covering how our utilities department uses the digital twin and what's coming next with the digital twin, and then also some solutions we've provided to streamline some work when it comes to the passenger boarding bridges, the jet bridges, as some people will like to remember them as, and using Survey 123 to streamline that process and bring quality assurance of those assets to the 21st century.
Sure, it's a large airport, so it's going to have a large model covering a lot of different things. I guess let's start with the asset mapping side. So what are the key assets that need to be mapped, all of the savings of putting in a model like this, and how much of an improvement is it on previous ways of doing things?
Okay. Yeah, I think within our utilities department is our key stakeholder for our digital twin, but more specifically, we've had a lot of buy-in with the HVAC group within our utilities department. And HVAC is very important to customer experience. You don't want any customers getting hot inside the terminals, right? So I think that's like the main focus and where we've seen the highest use of the digital twin. And the digital twin does a really good job of, you can set a lot of parameters for performance of assets. So HVAC, for example, I'm not going to pretend to be an HVAC expert, but you can set buffer ranges and you can, receive notifications if the fan has been running too long, or the output temperature is too high or too low, and so that's where it's been most heavily utilized. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Do you use a lot of it for maintenance or repairs and the effects that will have, or is it more often backtracking from effects that you're seeing and try and find out what those sources are?
Yeah, both. It's both predictive and it also looks backwards at. As soon as we install the sensors, we've got a tracking record of how those assets are performing. So predictively, we can see, for example, Terminal C, for example, these 5 gates, there's going to be a lot of passengers in there for the next 6 hours. So we're probably going to need to push these HVAC machines, continuing with that example, a little bit harder. They're going to have a higher output. So really going to focus in those experts or utilities experts are going to focus in on those HVAC specific to those gates for the next 6 hours. And so, they're going to, the data that's going to be tracked within our digital twin will show that performance. And then also, the experts will remember, okay, well, today, July 16th, that area, the Terminal C is going to have a lot of use.
Yeah, and additionally, because there may be some issue, say if there is an air handler unit or a chiller that's malfunctioning, they're able to see in depth what the other units are actually compensating for the lack of performance on another unit. And so they're able to see that by being able to manipulate the model that's within the twin, and they can see real-time statistics on how it was performing up to that breakage point, and then and then afterwards they're able to see okay, how sustainable is this, and how long do we have to fix these other ones before this one maybe gives out, or maybe is strained in some regard. And so yeah, that part of the digital twin is pretty impressive to me, and has, I think we could even refine it more by adding other data points or other sensor information. So there's a lot of potential going forward.
At some point, I'd like to talk about how you built the model, but following on the HVAC example, I'm wondering how much is someone like in a control room seeing the big picture, or is a lot of this stuff just automatically sent out to people in the field who just all of a sudden get a note that something needs to be taken care of? Like, what does that look like from an operations standpoint of seeing a problem, or even maybe not seeing a problem, just going directly to the people who fix the problem?
So yeah, a little bit of both. We've got people that are strictly in their offices monitoring it, and then they're also getting email notifications. They may have their eyes on a certain asset, but now they're getting email notifications about this fan box is being overused, or it's running too long, and so then they can pass that information on to the people that do go out in the field. But then we also have people that kind of have a hybrid role, where they're getting notifications, but they're not always sitting within that office watching the assets change. So it's kind of, I would probably say there's about 3 different roles, but they're all a Venn diagram of sorts. They're all receiving the same information about the same amount of time.
Yeah, but it just depends on, is it a technician that needs to react at that point? Is it a supervisor that needs to maybe, contact another party? Maybe that's, I don't know, maybe there's another issue, like people are complaining, they maybe have to send DPS out or something like that to maybe manage some of the crowds or whatever might be going on. Maybe we're moving away from less HVAC and more, say there's a plumbing issue or something like that. Then we can maybe address it differently. But yeah, it's strictly for like air handler units, chillers, HVAC, all of that. I mean, that'll be one team, but like Brandon said, it'll be like a Venn diagram where you'll have a supervisor and then all of his subordinates that are then going in and performing repairs or assessing the situation, so on and so forth.
So there's currently still, though a human who's in charge, who's seeing the problem and deciding who it should be distributed to, that it's not automated yet?
I think that's where we'd like to be as far as automation is concerned, because, right now it is fairly manual still. I think this is going to be a definite phased approach, mainly because I think building the interface was the heavy lift. And I think going forward, yes, we would like that to be automated where, whether it be an Esri product or a non-Esri product, assigning out these work orders, when these issues happen, they know exactly where to go, how to navigate through the terminals or non-terminal buildings, and, find that problem and squash it pretty quickly.
Okay, just some background. Is DFW its own entity, or do you also work with like local governments? I know different airports, some are completely autonomous and have their own cities, and some of them have to work with local governments as well.
So we are our own city. We are DFW Airport, Texas. Okay. We are not a quasi-government or anything of the sort. We have a board that makes all the decisions, and then everything that trickles down from there. So we have our own postcode. We have DPS. We have that's fire and police, SWAT. We manage our own utilities, our road networks, our addressing, basically like a city. The only difference is we don't have live-in people except for maybe the hotels, but I don't really think that matters. But yes, we are our own. We even have our own zip code. Fun fact: we also have cemeteries on property. So
does being your own city make it easier in some ways to not have to answer to as many different people, that you can make decisions quicker? And
well, we do have people on our board from surrounding cities, and I think they rotate. I'm not sure the frequency, don't quote me on that, but they we'll have the mayor of Fort Worth, the mayor of Dallas, maybe Euless, Grapevine. They'll participate in some of these large decisions because it does impact them directly. And so having them is a good way to keep them informed. I know I have good relationships with a lot of the surrounding areas. They're GIS managers because we're, one of which is Tarrant County 911. I mean, we share fire districts with them, and so it's like managing your partners in the surrounding area, because really we send out people to them, they send people to us if we need them. So yeah, it's all kind of comes full circle.
Okay, so maybe you could speak, I want to go back about how
Sure.
the model was built. What kind of data did you have that you were working from in existence, pre-existing data? What did you have to go out and acquire for yourself? And picture speaking to other people running an airport, almost certainly not the size of DFW, but maybe some of the things that they should be looking at as they're trying to digitize their system.
Yeah, so I can speak to a couple of them. I'll have Brandon, issue his opinion, but I think the biggest thing is your utility networks. If those are not sound, you will flounder very quickly, and I think we're finding that out. Luckily, we have an excellent team of people in our energy, transportation, and asset management group that have a very good handle on everything that's been built, being built, or being repaired, and then having your BIM ready to go, for integrating that into your twin. That is essential. Now we're coming to that point where we need to have that indoor aware interface where now we assign assets to rooms. We assign and yeah, maybe we can assign them to rooms, but now the question is, what about the assets in between floors or in the walls or underneath your feet? And so having that data ready to go, having Z values ready for them, is absolutely essential, and will set you up for success if you have that prepared beforehand.
What if you don't?
If you don't, then
I think I can only speak for DFW because I haven't worked for another airport, but I think for the most part, every airport, you're going to find data in different places, and the quality, can't assure quality ever necessarily if you don't know where it is in the first place. But so I think the data is always out there, no matter the size of the airport, and then it's just collecting it together and having stakeholders who want to manage it and uphold it to the highest value, and that are willing to work with each other so that we can put it all together for the data to make sense and actually push it through a twin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but to answer your question a little further, what if an entity doesn't? What if an organization doesn't? I would say use what you have. I mean, if it's in a tabular form, if you just have rough as-built, if you have your BIM, a rough BIM, or even if you have LiDAR scanners, get that set up. Find a way to go into these utility areas and just start there. See if you have anything tagged. If you do, use that as a baseline. If you don't, if maybe manpower is a limitation, there's always vendors and consultants out there. Esri's always willing to help in that regard too, using drones or using any type of UAV, whether it be a flight or maybe a robot within. There's vendor, they can point you to the right people. I wouldn't be terribly worried as long as you're getting started and pulling those files out of the file cabinet and really starting to digitize. Yeah.
Okay, so everybody likes to follow an example or a recipe. Could you guys go in some as little as much detail as you want of how you built your model and the things that worked for you?
I think you have to find a stakeholder first that's going to be your champion, and that can be difficult because you don't want to spend too much time building data sets or tools for a department that ultimately doesn't care. So it's really difficult to get that buy-in, but you have to do that before you start the road of trying to build out something in a twin for a specific purpose. You have to find somebody that wants to be your champion.
Who's yours?
It's our HVAC team, specifically our utilities department. Early adoption from them, and they saw the value in it, and they were ready to go. They were interested, always providing feedback. That's huge because there's only so far you can go if you don't know what the end goal is. I'm not an expert when it comes to utilities, but I know who is.
Yeah, Energy Transportation Asset Management, ETAM. They are the champions, and honestly, they're the end user and main stakeholder of most of our projects.
I would think in a lot of not just airports, but definitely a large thing they would be the people.
For sure. I mean, they interface with just about every department because, I mean, environmental has to provide information to them. Controls and analytics, the ones that do our BIM, they report to them. They collaborate too. Obviously IT, because it's from an electronic and digital standpoint, we have to support them. And then we've got a few others, like our design, code, and construction also falls under controls and analytics somewhat, where they're looking at maybe utilities that fall under the road or adjacent to the road, and so they have to then coordinate with construction teams. So it's they're kind of the champion, and they've done an astounding job of actually really giving the best feedback, like Brandon said, and just directing that whole use case, because you can build an app, like I'll repeat what Brandon said, but you can build an app. It could be have all these bells and whistles, but if it doesn't fulfill or accomplish a goal that was set by the stakeholder, you've just built something fancy that nobody uses.
That's really good advice. So then what, in your case, did you do next once you had that champion?
I think kind of what I was saying before with just ensuring that the data was sound, just doing a lot of QA/QC, because we weren't going to put it into the model if it wasn't complete yet, and so we had to find those gaps, or those, maybe they had questions that they had of hey, this manhole here has a wrong number. We need to go check that. This hydrant, we need to go check. These fiber lines, we also need to verify. Hey, we're laying 150 miles more fiber lines as well. So how do we place that in? Or how do we QA/QC it, and then put it into the twin? And so that was the next step, is ensuring that the data the data integrity was there.
Okay, so I'd imagine, that's got to be a very lengthy and intensive process to do all that kind of QA/QC over so many assets at an airport. Do you need to get that completed first, or can you move forward while that is going on? And what's a good way to move forward while this extensive data gathering QA/QC process is going on?
Yeah, I think you can do both. You don't necessarily need to have data be perfect. It helps a lot, of course, but that's part of the buy-in process, is finding people like, let's push our sleeves up. Like, I want to help you discover where this data is and what it means. And so as long as you're showing that you care about their data as much as they do, then they're going to continue, and they're going to continuously improve their process of QA until you've got the data to the point where the model's happy, stakeholders happy, everyone.
Do you have any thoughts on where that state of you can move forward is? Like, what do you need to really get forward while you're still working at the smaller details? What's the point where, okay, we've got enough to at least start making some progress while we're still checking out the other data? I
think for me is if their QA process doesn't have to be GIS related. If their QA process makes sense to me from my GIS perspective, if it's parallel to something that I would do, I like using Survey 123 for collecting data and field maps for QAing that data after it's been collected. And if they don't want to go that route, but there's something parallel to that where I can see it through my own perspective as a mirror of what I would do, then I think that's when I know that it looks good.
Okay, and that's enough to at least make your progress. And then how did it work for you? Because again, I know that this is very different than what most people are going to do, but what worked for you guys, I think they can maybe pick and find little bits and pieces of what may work for them. So not saying you're speaking for everybody, but just in your case, in your words, what worked for you guys as you're building this out?
Well, I think having an end goal in mind is always a good start. I think because I think interface was always on people's minds. How are we going to visualize these assets? And people knew they wanted to see 3D. Obviously seeing things in a digital space is not always the best in a 2D format, and so that having that was essential. But also, all these analytics and things, I think everybody had that app. They were very app centric. They knew they wanted something they could interact with and see in real time, something in real time. So at least, whether the data was sound or not, I think they still wanted to be able to have that goal, to be able to, work towards. That way, they could, while they were ensuring the schemas were built out properly, or, they were filling out certain data sets that may have been incomplete, now they're able to, just plop those final data sets into this model, and now it's visualized a little better. But I don't know if that answered your question, but
I've got another example.
Yeah, sure.
I think also keeping the customer in mind, always revolving back to that. Think about it, like if I want to travel, do I want to smell gases inside the terminal? No, I don't. Do I want the water pressure in the sink to work? Yes, of course I do. Do I want it to be well lit? You can go on and on with examples of what you do and you don't like about moving through an airport. And you have to remind yourself, like, oh, it does matter. It does matter that it's cool inside the terminal. It does matter that it's well lit inside the bathrooms.
I guess that's a good question on general surveying of how much is that on the people who do the designing, or how many surveys do you take of passengers and things like that as you're working for an airport? I'm sure that how much feedback do you get from them before you start the process?
I would say, trying to phrase this in a right way. We have this surveying platform called the CSA, and you'll find it all over DFW. You find it in the bathrooms, plastered there. You scan a QR code, and then it's reporting for negative things. And so I think that's how you get people. That's how you're able to crowdsource information. Is when people are really good at seeing when something is wrong. Google reviews can only take you so far, because how often are you getting a positive review? How many times you go to an airport and you have a good experience, but you don't even think about leaving a review? Well, we kind of rely on people telling us when something is wrong, even though it's kind of like I shouldn't say it's a backwards way of looking at it, but people are going to give you a lot more details if they're unhappy.
Yeah, and it's always going to be, whether it's solicited or not, we're always going to receive it. And so if we have a platform ready to go, where they're able to scan a QR code and show us their grievances, then we have that data immediately. And so I think, and typically too, I think a lot of who doesn't get enough credit are the customer experience teams, where they go in to these terminals and they can smell when a bathroom right next to gate B6 is having issues, just like the customers. And so they're able to say something as well and bring some attention to that on our utility side. And so, I think because of how we're built, each terminal is kind of a semicircle, except minus D and F eventually. We can detect those issues, or customers can, and we're gracious to go out there and do that, and to fix those issues and to address their concerns as soon as possible.
That's always things that I don't think about, like the customer service people, but they've got to get that information back to you guys and the people who are doing the maintenance of the infrastructure, right? Otherwise, it's a circle that goes nowhere both ways. If they don't know what the problems are, they don't give you the problems, then things aren't fixed and made better. So how do you make sure that is part of, I would think that'd be any large infrastructure project that's public facing?
Can you rephrase
what are some ways that to help other people, say they're making a building or a large thing that interacts with the public, to make sure that the customer's voices get back to those doing the design and the maintenance?
I think for DFW at least, that CSA application that we use, or that the public uses too, that's routed to our integrated operations center, and that's kind of the nervous system of the airport, and decisions get made out from there. So I think if you can centralize where you're collecting data, whatever platform you're using to collect data, as long as it's being centralized to the right party that's going to then make the decisions and knows who to call on to resolve those issues or maybe give praise, I think it's huge.
Okay, this is great. I know this is a very difficult one because this is such a big project that most people don't work on these kind of projects. So maybe some advice or things that you learned and maybe, you know, there's somebody out there who can relate this to a project that they're working on that isn't nearly so big.
I think what Brandon said was super important, where he said that, you know, having, you know, stakeholder buy-in is in having them be the champion. That's the big thing. You know, whether you work in local government, for the military, for the, you know, a DOT, it doesn't matter. Whether you're working for a bank, you know, make sure you have that executive buy-in in some regard, or not even executive. You have, you know, the right stakeholder who is the end user, who is the final stakeholder or the main stakeholder, be the ones calling the shots on how things should look, how things should be, because it's really for them. It's not for IT people. It's not for, you know, us GIS people. We're just there to support. You have to make sure that you have a good relationship with them, and, you know, kind of listen to their concerns. You know, don't brush them off. You know, ensure that, you know, they know what your standards are. That way there's no miscommunication as far as, you know, what their data should look like. But also you need to be listening to them, because they have some empirical knowledge of their data that you may not know, because we're not, like Brandon said, we're not HVAC experts. So we're going to have to listen to them for a bit. And then also, you know, the executives kind of don't understand that either. And so that's where we can help, you know, translate that language. I guess we learn it, we translate it, and hopefully that's translated over to the application. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're working, no matter what industry you're in, I think being able to have, I think being kind of a renaissance person of, you know, I'm a tech person. Yes, I'm a developer. Yes, I'm a utilities expert, or at least a novice. You know, and learning those things and learning to speak their language is important.
I think, to your point, Adan, identifying stakeholders can be difficult. Mm-hmm. And so you just got to go out there and explore a different department that I don't work with, or that I shouldn't work with. You know, we're all human. We all have problems, and we often have more in common than we have different. So finding someone in a different department that you've never worked with before and having a conversation, explaining what you do and vice versa, then you find out, oh, like, actually, you know, GIS, I think I could use that. It's like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that you are the person that decided, I don't know, I can't provide a specific example. You're this person who decided what color all the bathrooms should be because of whatever research. It's, oh, well, now we're thinking both spatially, and I'm thinking in a marketing sense or sociological sense of something. Yeah. So finding people that are do different work from you, you can always find a middle ground somewhere.
Yes, I think for me as just a senior geospatial data manager, if you're in a GIS role, or, you know, some sort of role where you do interface with GIS, not necessarily an analyst or anything like that, I would say make yourself present, make yourself known to your organization, because a problem that I've seen in a lot of other industries, even within ours, is we over procure, we overbuy when we can do a lot of things in house. And so I would say, make yourself present, know what you do, make sure other people know what you do and how you can help them, whether it's applications or maybe building out some data layers or something, teaching them a skill, survey 1, 2, 3, field maps. Make yourself present, so that way they're calling on you. You are a source of truth for them, and that establishes that relationship that I was talking about.